Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing really well this morning. I'm very excited to be sharing my project with you all. Literacy is very near and dear to my heart, and so it just felt fitting for me to do something that I love. My presentation is titled Close Reading Little Red Cap Using Bloom's Taxonomy and Critical Thinking. But before we jump in, I want to show you the handouts that I will have on hand for this workshop. So the first one is the agenda. This workshop will probably take from about 9 in the morning till about 4:15 in the afternoon. There's a lot to unpack, and in a workshop style environment, you want to be able to give time for attendees to work through what they're learning. I also have a list of supplies that actually I would supply because they wouldn't know to bring them on ahead of time. But when you're doing a close reading lesson, you need pencils, highlighters, the text that you're sharing with them. Sometimes there'll be graphic organizers or journals, but not for this lesson that we're doing today. And then, of course, the handouts that I will have for them. I have a Bloom's Taxonomy handout, and this one will make a little more sense when we get into the presentation. Again, this one will make a bit more sense once we get to the presentation, but this is the elements of thought. And this is to help with critical thinking. The text that we are reading is called Little Red Cap, and this is the actual one written by the Grimm's brothers. The original name was Little Red Cap, I found out. So there's that. And then I have another handout for specifically to guide creating text-dependent questions. And finally, a evaluation form for after the workshop is completed. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So you may be asking, what is close reading? So what close reading is it makes complex text, whether fiction or nonfiction, more accessible using repeated reading, cognitive scaffolding, and discussion. But why is close reading so important? The ability to read and comprehend complex text is a necessary skill for college. You all know the amount of reading that we have to do, and so it's very necessary to be able to comprehend what we are reading. Also, close reading helps students to be able to read above their comfort level. Close reading also helps students steer away from the gist reading or gist and list reading, where they're just looking for the main idea and the details. But there's so much more to reading than just the main idea and details. So close reading helps to kind of unpack that. Close reading also helps students to be able to develop a language sense. Much like students develop a math sense, students become very aware of the tone and the movement and the fluidity of language as they're close reading. This is the Bloom's Taxonomy handout that I have. And just as a quick recap through, the taxonomy is a hierarchy of cognitive skills students achieve through the learning process. You'll notice that levels 1 and 3 are more the lower ordering thinking skills. This is like basic recall, remembering, understanding, sometimes applying. We're kind of getting into that higher order. And it just requires basic knowledge and understanding. Levels 4 through 6 require students to be more critical thinkers and use the higher order thinking skills to analyze and evaluate, and finally to create new meaning through various mediums. What is critical thinking? So critical thinking is the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with a view of improving it. A lot of times our students are not learning how to critically think. They're just thinking and spitting out information that we're teaching them instead of being able to think for themselves. And this is a very important skill for students to have. Critical thinkers, they raise important questions and problems. They gather and analyze relevant information. They come to well thought out conclusions. They're open-minded thinkers, and they're able to communicate effectively with others in finding solutions to complex issues. Another way to help students think critically, I love this. I call it the critical thinking wheel, or the elements of thought wheel. And it's something that I got from this book right here. I used in college when I was taking some literature classes. and it guides students to think critically, because teachers create questions that use any of the elements of thought that are within that wheel. So for example, what are the lasting implications of Red's actions when she met Wolf? So you realize that students really have to think about what they read in order to think of the implications or the consequences. It's very important to know that critical thinking is a learned habit, and it requires clear communication and problem solving. We just don't come out of the womb critical thinkers. It's definitely something that we have to learn. So right now we take a brain break, and we'll be right back. All right, finally, so how do teachers prepare a close reading lesson? So because the process of close reading can take time, you want to make sure that you choose passages that are short, yet suitable for instruction and discussion. So you yourself read through the passage with a pencil and take notes, and then create questions that are text dependent, being careful to create questions that are high order thinking and that elicit critical thinking skills. So steps to have an effective close reading lesson with the class: you introduce the passage, read the passage either individually with a group or a teacher-led, annotate and highlight. Students reread the passage with a pencil and highlighter in hand. Then students discuss. They talk through their understanding of the passage with their partner. And then they question in pairs, in small groups, or in the whole class. Finally, we're going to get to the piece where they're going to analyze, evaluate, and create. And this is where students record and extend their learning through various mediums. And this is the piece that I love. This is the best part. So you want to introduce the passage. You want to build excitement and anticipation by introducing the passage to students. So this group will be 7th grade language arts students, and we're going to do a close reading lesson using Little Red Cap. So in the context of the lesson, we've been reading different fairy tales and how each story has a lasting lesson with implications for readers. And Little Red is no different. There are some underlying themes that need to be uncovered. So let's read more. So step 2, the students are going to read the passage or short story independently and discuss the passage with a partner. Remember, one of the keys to close reading is repeated reading. So let's read the passage a second time. Step 3, the students are going to go in with a pencil now, and they're going to circle important details. They're going to ask questions. They're going to make connections, notate something that is interesting or surprising, mark areas that are confusing, and underline key vocabulary. So this is where you would reread the passage again and annotate as you read. Step 4, students are going to talk through their understanding of the text with a partner. So now let's discuss this passage and your annotations with your partner. Another brain break, and we're back. So the step 5 is to question the text through text-dependent questions. And these are types of questions that demand that the answers come from the text, not from other sources. And a key element of text-dependent questions is that it directs students back to the text to locate evidence to support their answer. I always find myself asking my students, text evidence. Where did you find that answer in the book? Let's prove it. Text-dependent questions should engage students to ask 3 questions as they read. What does the text say? How does the text work? And what does the text mean? Now it would be the group's turn to go back to Little Red and to create 4 text-dependent questions related to the story. And they would use the handouts that I have provided. And I also have a sheet for them to create their questions on. And then we will share those questions as a group and answer them. So let's just look very quickly at these list of questions here. If you'll notice the 3 bolded and underlined words, they fit into Bloom's taxonomy. These are the 3 lower levels of the taxonomy. Then finally, we're going into a little bit of the higher order thinking skills. Are these critical thinking questions? We would discuss them. Yes, no. And then finally, the students are going to turn their learning into writing based on what they read. Then they're going to share with a partner. So the prompt could be, what conclusions can be made after reading this story? Is there another way to interpret the story's meaning? Any questions? And then finally, the students are going to be reading 3 different versions of Little Red, and they're going to follow the steps and then create another version of the story through poetry, song, interpretive dance, or reader's theater, original drawing, whatever they want, and then we're going to share as a group. That is it. Take care, guys.